Well, good morning. It's a beautiful day. It's got lots to do around here. I'm going to show you my disaster area, my workshop. Instead of cleaning up before I show any kind of projects and whatnot, I decided that you might as well see how it operates. It's a mess. I haven't worked in here at all in a week. Last time I worked, we shut down about 1:30 in the morning. And it was tore up before we got in there last week. A lot of projects half finished. The reality is I can't operate like this anymore. Eventually we have to clean it up. Most times I clean up just enough to do whatever I'm going to do. Today will probably be a little bit of that, but I got some things going on, projects I've started that relate to cleaning up. I'm going to try to get a few things off the floor. Probably throw some quick tool reviews in. We're not going to get real technical. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to give you a video about you got to use this tool with this particular saw blade or whatever. Most of the time we're going to use whatever I pick up, and if it's close enough it'll work. If you're trying to do nice woodwork, okay, a chainsaw is probably not the way to go. But we're not building Craftsman furniture here either. So I'm going to show you this, and I'm at risk of being embarrassed. It's reality. So the first thing I've got going today, I've got this old table that I salvaged. It was a outdoor yard art kind of thing, but it was made out of metal. And I thought maybe it'd make a decent stand for a couple grinders that need to be picked up. I haven't had a proper table for my grinders in about 10 years. I usually pick them up and clamp them to something when I need them. And well, we don't want to live like that. Not any longer anyway. So I'm not sure if you can see that. This is an old wheel. And this table, I filled the wheel with concrete to give it some weight. Now it's actually upside down, at least is the way it was intended to work. But we're going to put a wooden top on this. I've got some wood laying around. Metal would work. I could weld it or bolt it to the top. So we'll start with that today. Okay, we have a piece of plywood that was left over from some other project. It's not 4 feet wide. It's 8 feet long. I've cut something else off of it previously. I've decided that this is a reasonable piece to use for my project. It's 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm going to cut 2 pieces, 24 inches square. But let's talk about the saw for a second. We have kind of a standard here. This is a Milwaukee Sawzall. Excuse me, I'm sorry, skill saw. It says right on there. This has become, actually it's not a Milwaukee. I'm confused because it's red. It's made by Skill. Once again, back to the Skill saw. It's a trade name, registered trademark. Become, it's like Crescent Wrench. They're all Skill saws, right? Coincidentally, we have another Skill saw. I don't know exactly where this came from. a yard sale type item. Got somebody's personal information on it. These things will run forever if you just give them a little bit of attention. This one has had no attention in the last 15 years. I plug it in and we cut. This was kind of a rare item. It still has the original cord on it. You'll see a lot of them, the cords get replaced. It's not unusual for somebody to cut the cord. If you pay just a little bit of attention, if you're cutting the cord, you're not paying attention. If you're not paying attention, you're going to cut yourself. So that's key. This one, like I said, I don't know where it came from. I have long time ago purchased something like this, but this ain't the one. I don't know. This one has had the cord repaired. Technically, should be replaced. This one gets used for projects where I don't want to abuse my good saw. This one, I believe this blade is intended to cut aluminum. It's carbide tipped. It looks like I've got some writing on there so that I would know that it was for cutting aluminum. You can cut aluminum sheet with these saws. This blade, it would cut it. It'll cut the aluminum, it'll cut your bones, it cuts anything gets in its way, even a little bit of steel, although that tears it up pretty fast. I don't want the aluminum shavings that this thing creates getting into my motor on this. If this saw burned up and died tomorrow, I wouldn't care. But something I feel is a lot more important when it comes to these saws, besides safety, you'll notice the blades are on opposite sides. I've heard them referred to as left-handed saws. That's not really what it is, although I've been known to call it that too. I usually cuss at it. If you're right-handed, you're cutting with the right hand, you want to be able to see your line. In here, I've got a decent field of view of what I'm trying to cut. With these guys, you got to stand on the wrong side of the saw. In fact, you end up with your hands crossed up and everything else. And if you know, it's got a guard on it. But anytime you're working in an uncomfortable position, I consider it a safety issue. So, if you own one of these saws, fine, use it. Okay, they work. They sell them. They sell them by the millions, probably. If you're thinking about buying a saw, if you need a circular saw, skill saw, you're going to spend, I don't know, this saw, I could probably buy this saw or something similar to it for 40 bucks. I don't know. This saw was probably closer to 200 when it was new. This is a Mag 77. It's a little upgrade from the aluminum model. I don't know, I like the red color. I paid the extra money for the magnesium. But if you're gonna buy a saw, I really recommend getting the worm drive saw. It's a more natural cutting position. You'll do a better job. You'll work safer. Just if you ain't got the bucks, fine, buy one of these. But if you go to the Home Depot or wherever you go and you're buying material for your project, you're going to spend hundreds of dollars anyway. Don't screw it up with a piece of crap saw. Get a good saw. So, safety third, right? Okay. I got lots of things to do. This really shouldn't be like that. It's been like that for a long time. I keep using it. So I don't want to hear it. When I get around to it, we'll repair that, and maybe I'll make a short video on that too. And I was not concerned about precision. it's not that kind of project. They fit really good. I actually thought I'd trim them up so that they'd both be the same size after they were stacked on each other. But you can see here, this plywood is not particularly flat. It's been sitting around for a while. Part of why I'm using this. So what I've done is I've reversed the warp. So one's this way and the other one's concave, one's convex. We're going to glue them together. I'll spread a bunch of glue in between them and clamp it up and run some screws in it to hold it that way. And the hopes is that they'll cancel each other out. So we'll proceed with that. I've spread some glue on the between the two halves. I'm using what I consider to be a pretty good glue. I buy it by the gallon. Unfortunately, I don't use it up as fast as I'd like to, but it still works out cheaper, I think. But this stuff is, I don't think it likes to freeze, and if it sits around a while, it'll actually grow some mold. But once again, I'm not building craftsman grade furniture, and it does work. It's pretty good glue. So I'm sold on these things. They're considered construction screws. I don't know if you can see that. These are a Torx bit instead of the old Phillips screws. Everybody, well, I did. For years, we just used Phillips head sheetrock screws for screwing things together. And we thought that was great. But they tend to strip out the Phillips head on them. And they're not very robust. You can break them pretty easy. So these are a little heavier. They're not made for sheetrock. If you were doing drywall, you'd want to use something more appropriate. But these are really, I'm not going back to drywall screws for anything except drywall. Problem is, you got to use a Torx bit. Everybody's got a screwdriver. Everybody's got screwdriver bits for their cordless drill. You've all got a cordless drill, right? So I just spent 10 minutes looking for something to drive these, because apparently all my bits are, I've got a project going up at the house, and I got a lot of tools up there. So apparently my bits are up there, and I didn't want to walk up there. So I did this. It's just a 1/4 inch driver, and it's more of a mechanic's tool, but it's the right size. So we're going to screw this thing together. These screws are probably a little long. Yep. Okay, it's sticking through. Now, that's good. That's good. One, I know the screw went all the way through. And then I get to show you another tool. Meanwhile, I got to be careful not to screw this tabletop to my makeshift table. And this thing's got a torque limiting clutch that's not limiting much right now. We'll hold that one short so I don't screw it to the bench. Now I need one in the middle here. I don't want it right in the middle. I'm going to explain that here eventually. Good enough. So I'm going to put an electrical outlet in the middle of this table. So we're just going to leave the screws out of that for the moment. The idea is to put one outlet for the grinders on the table so that I don't have a bunch of cords. I'll have one cord onto the grinder, I don't know, table, stand, whatever you want to call it. But I'm thinking that I don't want just a flush mount receptacle because it's going to fill up with debris. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do yet. We'll kind of play with that as we get there. A couple more here. Okay, so I didn't buy special screws for this project. What I had was a little long. See how that pulled up tight? It's not perfectly flat, but we got to cut those off. First of all, it's just not the way I want it to be. Secondly, they're gonna cut me. So here we go. Another tool to look at. Milwaukee cordless grinder. I've wanted one of these things for a long time. DeWalt makes them as well, and probably a few others. It's not as powerful as a real grinder, but it's handy. I don't have to drag a cord out. It's quick. It uses the same battery as my drill. These are M18 lithium. Real good battery life out of these things. It's got a little indicator. I haven't decided if this is going to be the top or the bottom of the table yet. So let's make it nice, just in case it ends up being the top. Now you'll notice, or maybe you won't, a lot of my tools are kind of oriented towards metal work. I do more metal work than woodwork. Some of the rules apply, layout, measurement, and so on. The beauty of metal is you can fake it a little better. You can't weld up a gap when you're working with wood. Okay, I'm okay with that. So, like I was saying, I want to have an electrical outlet for my grinders to plug into. There's going to be 2 grinders on here. I originally thought 4. I think that's getting carried away. So I'm going to put my little belt grinder. This is a freebie. It was given, I got it from a place I used to work. They were tired of arguing with it. It kind of needs attention. once in a while. But they bought a brand new one, a bigger, badder one that I wish I could afford. I wish I could justify. And this is great for little polishing projects. It's got a disc here, pretty much toast right now. I was trying to grind some wood with it and it doesn't, it's kind of underpowered. I use it all the time and I always wish for that bigger, badder one. So this and a regular bench grinder are going to go on top of this table. The idea would be as an outlet mounted between the two. And my concern is all of this crap you see that kind of comes naturally with this type of tool is going to accumulate in the electrical outlet. If I mounted it upright and I was going to set it down so it's flush with the top, it would look really cool, but it would cause problems. So we got metal shavings, wood shavings, general debris. Probably quit working. That's assuming it didn't catch on fire. So instead of mounting it here in the middle, the box is going to go down here on the side. We'll just weld that on there. I decided that I'll just run a chase through the tabletop, through the bird bath looking thing here. I had a couple ideas and I'll show you what I came to as a conclusion. First idea, this is a scrap bend I had laying around and I thought I could put it in the middle, cut a hole in the side, and that's more work than we need to go through for this. Then I decided that I would just go straight through, slightly off center, and that's cool. I can do that. That's easy. We'll burn a hole in here. We'll use a hole saw to cut a hole in our tabletop. The intention being this thing is flush, or at least not protruding through the tabletop when it's done. But some of my cords just barely fit through here. So depending on what cord cap is on the grinder, I might have trouble getting one through with another cord already in there. So I decided that I would go to a little bigger piece of material. This is another piece of scrap. It was a cut off from a bend. This is pipe. This is tubing. The difference, let's have a conversation about this. Tubing, it's all tubing. It's all tubing. It's tubing because it's hollow. Okay, let's start with that. Pipe is intended to be structural or hold pressure. Water pipe, gas pipe, you get the idea. Then you have conduit. Conduit is intended to be, it's used for wiring. In this case, this is a EMT. You would typically find this in an industrial kind of application. Surface mounted. You don't usually bury this in the wall. We also have, this is rigid conduit. Once again, it's dimensionally the same as pipe. It is not intended to hold pressure. It just, wires run through it. It's got a lot more thickness. It uses threaded connections. It's rigid. It doesn't, I can bend it. I got stuff to bend it. There are benders for this. In fact, one of my benders is for bending rigid conduit. And likewise, it also bends pipe. Today we're using what we have. This is a piece of scrap. I save scraps for these kind of projects. This stuff, the conduit is galvanized for rust protection. It really doesn't weld very well. And it's steel inside, but the galvanizing creates problems. Sure, we weld it. It's nasty stuff. I would not use, certainly not conduit in any kind of a structural application. Pipe is actually, it's structural. It's used in structural steel. There's people out here everywhere that'll build a roll cage or something out of it. And it really isn't the end of the world. It's not recommended, but it works. It comes down to more of a design criteria than a materials. If you're, I don't know, if you got a bunch of pipe and you know how to weld it and you know how to design it, I don't have a problem with a roll cage built out of pipe. It's a little bit hack, but it's been done and keeps people alive. It's better than nothing, that's for sure. So today we're using this piece of pipe. Back to the tubing versus pipe. Tubing is measured on the outside. This is 2-inch hot roll electric weld. Been through one of my benders. It fits inside this pipe, which coincidentally probably is 2-inch pipe, but you can see the difference. Pipe is measured roughly on the inside. You're not going to find a 2-inch pipe to be exactly 2 inches, but it's in that neighborhood. So we're going to take a piece of this, we'll cut it to length at some point. It'll pass through. Now conveniently, it's not going square to the surface, it's going to go square with the world. So we use a plasma cutter. I'll cut a hole, weld it in, figure out where it landed. We'll cut a hole in the plywood with the hole saw, which could create a problem. I may not have a hole saw that fits that accurately. We'll see where that ends up. Okay, so I just kind of drew a circle with some soapstone where I'm going to put this thing. There's no science here other than take a wild guess, cut it, see what happens. Okay. Perfect? Nope. But if I wanted to camouflage it, it would be, the gaps are well within reason of welding. It's not going to be seen. I don't care. Once again, a little cleanup, weld it all the way around both sides. It could look pristine. I don't care. Okay, So I cut a piece of pipe, deburred all around just to make it look decent. But I want the inside not to have any real sharp burrs. My electrical cords are going to go through that hole, so we don't want them to cut the insulation on the cords. And this place is such a mess. I can barely get the welder to my table. So that's back to why we're doing all this. Our table is 1.5 inches thick. I've got a piece of 1.5 inch rectangular tubing, and it's just held in there with magnets, eyeballed. Is what it is. I'm not sure how that's going to look on the video, but we'll find out. So, just quick and dirty, threw a couple welds on it. If I cared, I'd weld it up. If I cared, I'd weld it from the backside. Well, actually the outside. I made an eyeball guesstimate on the angle. It's not perfect. I don't care. So I laid out for my hole, and I did find a hole saw that fits. Well, I haven't tried it yet. It should fit over my pipe that I've got welded in over there. But I want to show you something. I just came up with this idea. I can't say I originated this idea. I stole it from, I've got a mag drill that we use for drilling heavy stuff that you can't put in a drill press. It's got a magnetic base. You stick it on there, you turn it on, and it's like a drill press, and it's a little heavy, but it's portable. Anyway, it has a little bit of spring tension that ejects the slug out of the cutter. It's basically a hole saw. They're a little fancier and whatnot. And so I drilled one side of this thing. I like to drill partway through until the pilot bit comes through the other side, come back and drill from the other side. Leaves a nicer cut. But anybody that's running a hole saw, you end up with the piece stuck in there, and you got a screwdriver or something, and you're trying to push this thing out, and it just slows down the process. So what happens if I went to my box of miscellaneous springs and I found this. I put this over the drill bit and drilled it. Now, only tried it one time, so this inconclusive. This is the second slug that I cut, and it popped right out of the hole saw. So this spring does not have a lot of tension. I can push down on it. I didn't feel it was in there when I was drilling. But you know, these things get stuck in there. Okay, well, yeah, okay. I don't know. It's going to take more testing, but sure made it, at least on the one time I tried it, the slug popped right out of it. Okay, so everything's going well here. I just lightly hit the edges with the belt sander, knocked the sharp corners off. I could have gotten a lot fancier. This thing came up pretty flush, absolutely acceptable. The gap there, some junk will get in there. I could caulk it if I cared. I don't. So far, it's a lot nicer than it needs to be. I just drilled some holes, 8 places on the table, run some screws in there. They don't penetrate on the top side. So now we'll get the grinders on there. Okay, that battery didn't last very long. So I mounted the grinders on here where I think they need to be, based on past experience and a few things like that. I mounted my belt grinder. It's the only one I got. I got several bench grinders. This one's kind of small, but I like it. It runs smooth, and it's got the wheels on it that I use, so we'll just go with that for now. We've run out of coffee, so kids, remember, if you're going to drink all day, you got to start in the morning. We're going to weld this box to the post. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. This particular box, brand new. The knockouts are 3/4 in the center on all of them. That's not a problem. I'd like it's going to be a 1/2 inch clamp that I put on here. I'd like it to come out the middle. I'll either use a bushing, which they actually don't work all that great, or it'll come off the side. Okay, kind of thin. I've managed to burn a hole in it, so I'm going to try and camouflage that a little bit. Only you and I will know. So, what you see here is pretty close to the finished product. I'll have to see if I can come up with some electrical stuff to put in that box. We'll take the cords and tie them up neatly as possible, and there'll just be one cord coming out of here going to the wall or extension cord or whatever ends up getting used. At the moment, there's so much crap in here, I don't think I can get it close to a wall. This grinder bolted on with bolts all the way through, nylock nuts. They tend not to vibrate off. I prefer nylock nuts. For anything that's going to vibrate, if it's on a car, or in this case a grinder, they're a lot more reliable. On this guy, I just used the same screws that we used to screw the two pieces of plywood together, as well as the mounting. They don't penetrate. They're just barely too long when it just goes through the plywood. So they don't penetrate. I've got a good bite though. Nice thing here, if I change my mind or I get a new one, a new grinder, a different grinder, I can take these things off and it's real easy to drill a hole. If this was steel, sure, we can drill holes in it. We can blow a hole in it with a plasma cutter or the torch too. Wood is so easy for this. I don't plan on using this thing heavily enough to catch the wood on fire. It was pretty close to a zero cost operation here. The box was laying around, it's brand new, so I can't call it repurposed. The concrete, once again, I had it, but you only get to use concrete once, so I wouldn't call that repurposed. But the wheel was something I had laying around off an old Jeep of mine. I picked it because, I don't know, I had probably 20 different wheels to choose from. So I'll get some electrical in this thing and I'll show you the final product. Okay, so I'm very happy with how this turned out, considering that it's pretty much just a bunch of junk I had laying around. Found a cover plate that's close enough. It's designed to mount to a different box, but it's on there. And I don't know, see, I've got outlets, two different colors in the true purpose, or true spirit of repurposing things. It's just what I found laying around. I actually could have come up with two black ones, but it is what it is. Nice and smooth, doesn't vibrate. Teeters a little bit on that spot on the floor, but the table is pretty solid. I can pretty much put my weight on one corner and it doesn't fall over. Now, bench grinder is a tool grinder, not a parts grinder. A tool like this, a belt grinder, which actually has a disc on it as well, that's a part grinder. If I had a piece of ugly metal like this that I cut out of the table here, and I wanted to clean that up, this is not the tool for that. Over here, I can use the disc to shape it, the little belt for fine polishing, deburr. A bench grinder is for grinding tools, a drill bit or a chisel, lawnmower blade. It will, if you're grinding parts like this on this stone, quickly it becomes out of round, it'll vibrate, you'll get a concave or a convex. You need, the face of this wheel needs to be flat. And you can dress it, there's a tool, and every time you dress it, you take a certain amount of material off. If you're using it to grind crap like this, it wipes it out really quickly. So, if you only got one grinder, I guess you're stuck with it. This is a tool grinder. This is a parts grinder. So, Anyway, give you a quick view of what we've got here. And I'm gonna also play around with the my little hole saw trick. So nothing fancy here. This is all whatever I found laying around and whatever kind of jumped out at me. There's no blueprint to this. It's just whatever we had. Okay, so what I've done, this is just a random spring that I found, and it kind of just sits in there. Now, if I drill this and I just go all the way through, I can pretty much assume that the piece of plywood is going to get stuck in the hole saw. Okay, had to find a battery. So, had to make a short walk, find another battery. So, picking up where we left off, stand where you can see, and not that you care. Okay, so this is normal. First of all, I didn't drill from the back side. I went all the way through to do it as wrong as I could. There's a spring inside there. Yeah. Okay. Maybe a good idea. It needs a little refinement. Although I will say that seems to be coming out easier than the last one I cut with this hole saw. Maybe I'll work on that. Hang on. Hey, we'll do it live. The spring fell out. So let's try this again. Did you see that? It shot right out of there. I think I'm onto something. I couldn't have done that any more wrong. It should have bound up in there tight. You saw what it did the first try without the spring. When it punched through, the spring and the slug went right to the floor. Sometimes I impress myself.